What's up, everybody? I'm Ryan Thomas. Welcome once again to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, Part 2 of tonight's show. Part 1, I talked about GSP, the ongoing battle between George St. Pierre now and the UFC, the fight that GSP never expected to have, and the fight that the UFC fans never thought they would see. Myself especially, I never thought I'd see a day where the UFC and GSP would be in a war of words legal battle situation. Awkward is an understatement. To say it's awkward would be a complete understatement. But we do have good news on the horizon, and it comes from the number 2 organization in mixed martial arts today, Bellator MMA. Scott Coker on ESPN SportsCenter announced today that Tito Ortiz and Chael Sonnen have agreed to a date in Hollywood, Los Angeles. The Forum will host Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen January 21st in the main event of Bellator 170. I am very excited for this fight. Pardon me. I think that this is probably one of the best fights that Bellator has put on in Bellator's history, because this is a fight between two fighters that are two of the all-time greats in UFC history, two of the biggest names in UFC history, fighting in another promotion in a fight that was never made, obviously, in the UFC, between the former light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz and the former middleweight/light heavyweight contender Chael Sonnen, one of the biggest draws in mixed martial arts history. Chael Sonnen's going to be making his Bellator debut, the main event. I am very, very excited for this fight. Fight I never thought I'd see. No other fights have been announced for this card, but I'm anticipating that it's going to be very exciting. A very exciting fight indeed, and a very exciting card. Tito Ortiz is coming off a loss versus Liam McGeary, who's the light heavyweight champion in Bellator, and Chael Sonnen obviously making his return to the cage. His first fight in 3 years. His first fight since UFC 167. Another fighter that walked away from the sport after UFC 167 besides GSP was Chael Sonnen. This is the first fight of the quote-unquote Legends ass-kicking tour that Chael Sonnen said that he would partake in. The first victim is Tito Ortiz in his very own words, and Tito Ortiz begs to differ. So there's a sign on the bottom line. The fight will be on Spike, on national TV. I love the fact that Bellator is building its brand through a avenue in which helped the UFC tremendously on Spike TV. They're taking advantage of that market that was once used by the UFC to build their brand. And obviously, with the developments of GSP, with the developments of Rory McDonald, Benson Henderson jumped ship, Josh Thompson came from the UFC back to Bellator, Scott Coker, the president of Bellator, running the organization now. Bjorn Rebney did a terrible job. He was pretty much fired from his position, and he didn't do a terrible job, but he's not doing the things that Scott Coker has done. Scott Coker really helped build Strikeforce into a valuable brand, and Strikeforce was absorbed by the UFC, in which the UFC received fighters with the likes of Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier, and Ronda Rousey. So Strikeforce was no slouch in terms of their brand, and they brought women's MMA. Scott Coker is a very integral piece in bringing a very integral, important figure, and slowly but surely bringing women's mixed martial arts into the limelight. He has not been given enough credit for that. And I think Bellator is well on their way to becoming a great organization. This fight couldn't be laughed at as two fighters that are past their prime. Yeah, on the surface, Chael Sonnen's 39, Tito Ortiz didn't win a fight for over 5 years while in the UFC. So he's obviously past his prime as well. But it's an exciting fight, and it's between two guys that have two huge fan bases. While they might be at the end of their career, they're two guys that are at the end of their career. They're at the same point in their career. I think Chael Sonnen has a little bit more to give than Tito Ortiz. That's why I'm going to pick Chael Sonnen for this fight. But it's a fight. It's mixed martial arts. It's exciting. Two fighters that I never thought would see fighting each other at the Forum, which is a huge venue for Bellator, a venue that was the house that Michael Bisping built in the UFC with his knockout over Luke Rockhold at UFC 199. The same venue, the same arena. So very exciting. The Forum is a huge venue in fighting and fight history. So it's exciting stuff for Bellator. I'm proud of them, happy for them, and they're well on their way. They're dabbling into the market of Canada with the signing of Roy McDonald, and they will flood the Canada market with the possible signing of Georges St-Pierre. So, very interesting stuff. Also wanted to cover the other guests that were on the Mixed Martial Arts Hour with Ariel Helwani. Holly Holm was a guest on the show. She talked in great detail about where she's at in her career, where she's at with the thumb injury that she suffered through in her last fight, which was a loss to Valentina Shevchenko. And Holly Holm is obviously known in the mainstream media as the woman that knocked out Ronda Rousey and took Ronda Rousey's belt, one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. That was back in November of 2015, almost a year ago. So a lot has changed. Holly Holm has lost 2 straight fights. Her first title defense, she lost to Miesha Tate. Her last fight, she lost to Valentina Shevchenko. And she's at a point in her career where she is kind of doing some soul searching. So, she's coming off that injury where she had a very bad broken thumb, had surgery on it. So she should be back before the end of the year. Those are her exact words. Wouldn't it be an amazing turn of events if she was on the same card with Amanda Nunez versus Ronda Rousey at UFC 207? I'm very, very excited. Very excited for this event. Very excited for UFC 207. And that was a segue there to the fight that, will obviously be the main event. Ronda Rousey is back. That is the biggest headline that you could possibly put out for the end of the UFC's calendar year. Ronda Rousey is back. And I'm talking to, on Twitter right now, my buddy Dave Poole. He has joined me on the show a couple times. And he is tweeting me about the Chael Sonnen fight, saying, "Thank the Lord." Thank the Lord is right. I am very excited. And I'm very excited about this fight. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a well-timed fight. I think that this is the perfect timing for Chael Sonnen and Chael Sonnen and Tito Ortiz to fight each other. And back to what I was talking about originally, before I got distracted there, Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunez. I've talked in great detail about this fight a few times, and really what is a concept that gets lost on a lot of people is that Amanda Nunez was the original challenger for Ronda Rousey. She was the number 1 contender at the point in which Holly Holm was given the title shot over Amanda Nunez, and we all know what happened from that moment on. So it's funny how history kind of works, how the future kind of works itself out in a way. It didn't really work itself out in a way in the case of Holly Holm, but in the end, we will get the Nunez-Rousey fight. It's just on a completely different contrast as opposed to what we were expecting. Amanda Nunez was the number one contender. She had just knocked out Sarah McMahon viciously. And we thought that, I had said on the Thomas take that she should get the next title shot. And then Holly Holm did. And I thought, well, that's a big matchup. 19-time boxing champion versus an Olympian judoka fighter in Ronda Rousey. So, that was the decision that the UFC made, and it was the right one because it provided the organization with one of the greatest fights, most memorable finishes in UFC history. So this fight is very interesting. Will Amanda Nunez be able to put on the performance that she did versus Miesha Tate at UFC 200 in the main event spotlight? She really impressed me, and putting it that way, it's putting it lightly. She took the main event spotlight at UFC 200, and frankly was kind of an unknown, taking on a durable, tough Miesha Tate, veteran, experienced Miesha Tate, and she just ran right through her. Made Miesha Tate look like she was nothing. Ripped her face open, hit her pretty hard initially, broke her nose, and the fight was over in quick work. As I've said before, I've said on Facebook, I've said on this show, that Amanda Nunez is a buzzsaw type fighter. She's not a kickboxer. She's not a wrestler. She's going to go after you initially to try to hurt you. And if she can, she's going to try to take you down and choke you, or break you in any way possible, whether it's a limb or mentally. And I think that's what she's going to try to do to Ronda Rousey. Being away from the sport for a year, there is going to be ring rust. Ring rust is real. It's something that I've seen, and it's something that honestly I have felt as a former wrestler myself, as a former baseball player, as a former competitor in sport. If I don't play something for a long time, I'm not in the actual avenue that is real, live, a live game or a live match. I'm not the same. And I can even parlay that into practice to real live matches. It was tough where, you're doing so well in practice, but practice and the real thing are two completely different components. They're two completely different worlds. You can meticulously prepare, step by step, game plan, film, do everything that you need to do. And I'm talking about in any sport. And it might not go that way. Something else might happen. And that's what I think could eventually happen to Ronda Rousey in this fight with Amanda Nunez. Another fight that's obviously going to be happening at UFC 206 is DC versus Rumble 2. I see DC winning that one in the same fashion that he did the first time. Although Anthony Rumble Johnson is the most powerful puncher in the UFC, he has a very tough time defending the takedown. And Daniel Cormier is one of the best wrestlers in mixed martial arts. So I'm going to give that fight to Daniel Cormier. I'll give my prediction on that. And I'm going to delve deep into that at a later date. Obviously that's December 10th, and the Ronda Rousey fight's December 30th. But I've already talked about UFC 205 with David Poole on the show. I've already talked about, Ronda a little bit now. And, I talked about GSP earlier. And obviously Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen. In closing, does the UFC not know what they had with George St. Pierre? Or what they have in George St. Pierre? This company, this new talent agency group that now owns the UFC, I have doubts whether they really know the severity of the history of the sport. Whether they've really looked into that. William Morris Endeavor, WME, do they know exactly what the history is behind this brand? I don't know. And it's one of those things that is very disturbing. We'll keep our eyes on it. Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.